Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Laura, and this is your flash briefing for the week of May 12th. City Council meet for a regular session Tuesday night, 6 in Council Chambers and City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watched live on the City's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Lee Summit Fire Department at a fun-filled open house on May 17th from 9 a.m. to noon at Fire Station Number 2, located at 2000 Northeast Rice Road. Bring the whole family to tour the fire station and walk through an inflatable house to learn about fire safety. Don't miss this opportunity to honor their legacy and join the celebration. The first summer concert at Rock the Amp has been booked. Grab your tickets to see Foo Fighters, a tribute to Foo Fighters on May 31st at 7 p.m. at the Legacy Park Amphitheater. They're a highly sought-after act known for delivering an authentic live experience. Get tickets at rocktheamp.net. And sign up for LS Aware, the city's free mass notification system. It can alert residents about a variety of events, ranging from severe weather and other emergencies to more routine announcements such as road closures and water utility maintenance. Messages will be sent to residents on their preferred communication device. You choose how to be notified. Learn more at lsaware.net. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Officers en route, 914, armed robbery.
I'm Assistant Chief Jim Eden.
And I'm Battalion Chief Ben Hicks.
And today we're at Lee Summit Fire Station 3. Fire Station 3 was part of the 2016 no tax increase general obligation bond for public safety initiatives. The station was built and occupied in August of 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've not been able to give tours or have an actual ribbon cutting. So we want to invite you in today to give you the opportunity to see what goes on within the Lee Summit Fire Department station.
Let's go take a tour.
This is our admin side of the facility. We use this side mainly for offices. We have a lot of work during the day, whether it's training or doing reports or just generally taking care of the shift that we need to do. At this particular station, Station 3, we do have an assistant chief that works out of here. That person has their own office where they need to manage what's going on throughout the day with the shift and staffing, and as well as running calls out of here. The captain has their own office as well. What the captain does is at this specific station is in charge of both the fire truck that's here as well as the ambulance. And so with all those personnel responsibilities as well as running calls and reports, that's where they work out of. And generally for the rest of the crew, which is somewhere around 5 to 6 individuals, we have rooms to write reports, and we have additional training rooms and other rooms where people can work. Walking into our living area, I think it's important to recognize that we work 48-hour shifts. So in the evenings, after 5 o'clock, after work is done, we may have the opportunity to catch a game or something else as long as we're not running calls. And this gives us the opportunity to do that. When we go into our kitchen, I think this gives you a great reason to know why we go to the grocery store. When you see fire trucks at the grocery store, what we're doing. Well, so for 2 days working for 48 hours, we buy all our meals at the grocery store, and then we come in here and cook, just like you guys do at home. So everybody has their own fridge on each shift, as well as their own pantry, and then we cook those meals here. Going into the sleeping side of things, we've got a couple different things that are significant. We have our own laundry room, which again is important when we're here for 48 hours. The opportunity to wash and clean our clothes and bedding is very important for hygiene. And walking into where our beds are, we keep the kind of sleeping quarters over on one side of the building. It gives us both easy access out to where our fire apparatus are, as well as kind of keeping it a little bit quieter for those people that have been up all night running calls. We have 11 bedrooms here at this station. And the reason we built it with so many bedrooms is we want to give ourselves as a city the opportunity to expand. So if we need to put another apparatus here or numerous other people working at this station, that's already in place as far as infrastructure goes, and we don't need to go back and try to make it bigger or better. And that's really important for us, especially because the old station was so small. Back out on the apparatus floor, we had doors facilitated as many places as possible, so that way when we're sleeping at night and a call comes out, we can make our way out fairly quickly to get out onto the truck if we need to and run a call. On the other side of the station, we kind of have other stuff that we may want to keep separated if we want to. Physical fitness is very important to us as firefighters. So in order to better ourselves and make sure we're as healthy as we can to do this job, we have our own gym facility here that we kind of go throughout the day when we can and get an opportunity to come in and work out. Our goal when we run calls, when we get back to the station after calls, our goal is to get ready to go back as soon as we can to run another call. So we have the opportunity or capability here to fill up our air tanks. You see firefighters wear the big air tanks on their backs, and they use those in a fire. We can come back and fill those up and make sure that we're ready to go again when we're wanting to go run another call. We have our own workshop here. We work on a lot of our tools and making sure that everything's clean and operational, and this gives us the capability to do that, again, to make sure that we have everything we need and we're as capable as we can be running calls throughout the city. Cancer prevention is very important in the fire service right now. Because of that, we have an extractor machine, and what this does is gives us the capability when we come back from a fire, we can put our bunker gear into this machine and get all that really nasty crud off of our gear. Again, kind of getting back to that cancer prevention mode, allowing us to be as clean as we possibly can for the next call. And finally is our bunker gear room. We each have our own individual locker. This gives us the opportunity to store our gear when we're not here working in between shifts, as well as keep a clean extra set on here in case we do run a fire and we need to clean our current gear. Typically, this is where your day starts off at the fire station. You come in and get your gear and put it on wherever you're working that day, and then you end the same way, bring your stuff back to your locker to go home after working. This is Med 3. This ambulance just currently moved into the station from Station 7. Station 3, since we've had it built, has turned into one of our busiest stations in the city. Therefore, we wanted to provide the best care in the closest unit as we could. So we moved one of our ambulances up, and this became Med 3 for this particular instance. Out of this station, we also have Pumper 3. And that's a fire apparatus that they utilize to run the calls on this west end of the city. The last vehicle that you see is the chief's vehicle. We have 2 shift chiefs on shift every day, and they split the city. And this chief running out of this station typically covers the west and south area of the city, while our chief of Station 2 covers kind of that northeast section of our city, and they divide it up evenly.
Thank you for going on a tour with us today. If you have any other questions about the Lee Summit Fire Department, please go to our webpage at lsfire.net or follow us on Facebook at Lee Summit Fire Department.
Thanks for joining us on the tour.
I really love living in our historic downtown. I walk my dog around. The shops take her for, they do pub cups at Poppy's, so you can get ice cream with a little dog biscuit in it, which is her favorite thing in the world. My neighbors, we have block parties together. I really like how welcoming and how vibrant it is. It's an amazing place to live. Lee Summit's a really great community. I love living here, and I just wanted to try to find a way to give back. look out for my neighbors, for the community. I've always tried to be involved. Before serving on City Council, I used to volunteer with AFS, which is an organization that hosts foreign exchange students. So my husband and I have hosted kids from around the world and then also volunteered with local families and schools. In my professional life, I'm a paralegal, and then in my personal life, I enjoy reading, sewing. I'm a quilter, so I just finished a log cabin quilt that I'm going to send to my aunt out in DC. I can't claim any of our council accomplishments for myself. This is always a team effort. But I am really excited about the farmers market and event space that we have coming in. It's still in the design phases, but I think it's going to be a really beautiful space, and it's going to really continue keeping our downtown thriving. It's been in progress for a long time, but I think that people are going to really love it when it's done. I think one of my top priorities is going to be attainable housing. That, for example, I've been trying to find a place for my mom in Lee Summit. And it's really challenging finding something that really works for a retiree who doesn't have a huge budget. Just trying to make it more attainable for people no matter where they're at in their lives to be a part of our community. Community is what we make it. Everybody should get involved in whatever way they can, whether that's just voting or whether it's joining a board or a commission or even running for office. What they say, the world is run by those who show up. So get involved however you can and make a difference in the community.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, May 14, 2025 Community and Economic Development Committee meeting. Can I get a roll call vote, please? Or call to order?
Chair Lovell.
Here.
Vice Chair Hodges.
Here.
Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Rader.
Present.
Planning Commissioner Funk.
He's no longer the representative.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I take it. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Chair, I move for the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the agenda by Councilmember Hodges, a second by Councilmember Rader. I had to think about that for a minute. Can I get a vote, roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Chair Lovell.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hodges.
Aye.
Do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
None. Okay, that'll take us into business. Item A, 2025-6892, approval of the April 9th, 2025 Community and Economic Development Committee action letter. Look for a motion.
Chair,
Yes.
I move for the approval of the April 9, 2025 Community and Economic Development Committee action letter.
Second.
Got a motion to approve the action letter by Councilmember Rader and a second by Ms. Pryor. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Chair Lovell.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hodges. Aye. Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
All right, take us into item B, TMP 3297, ordinance amending Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages, Article 3, licenses, Division 1, generally Section 476 required of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, presented by Mr. Ward.
Well,
Mrs.
hi.
Joshua
Ward is our police custodian of records. I am Major Nicole Walters with the police department. But I'm going to just run down what you have in front of you, and Mr. Ward will answer any questions if you have any specific that I can't answer. So in front of you, you have an ordinance amending the current language as it relates to the distribution of alcohol for compensation. Basically, what this is some of our city boutiques are providing complimentary champagne and wine to patrons. We had an internal discussion with Missouri Alcohol and Tobacco Control Supervisors, and we identified a couple of issues with our ordinance. To start, Section 476 has language that's more restrictive than state statute. And while we can be stricter than state, we generally mirror state statutes with very few exceptions. Also, the language prohibits any distribution of intoxicating beverages, and this language, like I said, is not included in state statutes. If we were to enforce the current distribution language, the boutiques would then be required to have a liquor license to provide that complimentary alcoholic beverage. The problem with that is, as they operate, they cannot obtain a liquor license because their business models do not meet the definitions of liquor license ordinances that we currently have. So they're not violating any state law by giving out the complimentary beverages. As long as there's no presumptive sale, the patrons receiving the beverages are over 21, and they do not sell food or snack or any other type of beverage. If they did that, then they would meet the liquor law license requirements. So we are just recommending to amend that section and remove that just distribution language. We recommend that the language be comparable with state statute, and we recommend new language specifying that the distribution cannot be for compensation. So that's basically.
Can I get a list of the places that are giving away free beverages, complimentary beverages? I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, the list may grow after
this.
The list may grow after this. So, yeah, I will note, though, that with the amended language, we will still investigate any issues that may come up or complaints regarding that as far as visually intoxicated people or presumptive compensation sales, things like that. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I think it's pretty cut and dry. It feels like a good. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
So just kind of a clarification question.
Yes.
When you say they can't sell food, and I know this affects a lot of the businesses in downtown, when you say they can't sell food, is it not, they can't sell food like to consume, like prepared food, or they can't sell food like that's already in enclosed packages?
They can't sell prepared food, they can't sell packaged food, snacks, anything like that.
Oh,
they could
okay.
have that complimentary as well, but they can't
Okay.
sell any other food or beverages within that business. So basically,
Okay.
if you had a, I don't want to mention any particular businesses, but if you had a business that just sold clothing items, they could, and they gave complimentary champagne and complimentary pretzels or something like that, but they
Okay.
can't sell those items.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, it seems like a good cleanup of the ordinance. So I guess I would look for a motion.
Chair,
Yes.
I move to recommend to City Council approval of Agenda Item TMP-3297, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3, Licenses, Division 1, generally Section 4-76, required of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to approve TMP 3297 by Councilmember Hodges, second by Councilmember Pryor. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lovell,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hodges.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
And I'll just say a recommendation for approval, so. Yes. All right, that'll take us to item C, discussion on zoning authority and process. Ms. Nassif.
Good afternoon, Amy Nassif, Interim Director of Development. Let me pull this up for you here. So tonight's discussion is just that, a zoning discussion. We were asked to talk a little bit about just the zoning process, our authority within the zoning process, and what we can and can't do with the zoning petitions that come in. Please feel free to stop me anytime as we're going along, or any questions that you have. I'll be doing this presentation and then be tag teaming a little bit with David Bushik as well. So before we start talking about zoning, what we can and can't do, it is always important to first look at planning, because planning is the basis for and provides our foundation for the zoning acts itself. And so when we're talking about planning in this vein, what we're talking about is the municipalities working with stakeholders, with the residents, to create that community vision and goals. And that evolves itself and will create our comprehensive plan that we have. And so believe it or not, with every project that we get in the door, we're always, the first thing we're looking at is the comprehensive plan and the goals from that. And while we do have these 7 areas of future plan elements, the most popular thing that we talk about, and we have it in all of our slides that we present to you for our zoning cases also, is that future land use map. So the future land use map, the purpose for that, and the reason it's included in comprehensive plans and is such an important part of that, is that this is really what gives the property owners the idea for what a reasonable backed expectation of how their property can develop is. The land use map is not parcel specific, it's not zoning designations, it's higher level concept categories. So lots of municipalities, including ours, you're gonna have things where it just says residential, or sometimes it might say low density residential, or ours, for instance, says residential 1. But it's not going to break things down further than that. Because the idea of this is that this will give that reasonable idea. So if someone comes in and they own property, they have a general sense of what could or could not be possible here. And so this map is also used to start all of our conversations with developers when we have our pre-application meetings as well. So how does this marry and tie then with the zoning? So if you own some property and you come in the door and you're like, hey, you know what, I want to zone my property and build a commercial enterprise here, or build a warehouse. So the first thing we look at is, well, what does the land use map say that we just talked about? And then the second thing we look at is, what's your current zoning designation on that property? And so what zoning does, and the act of zoning, is it designates different zoning districts on parcels. It is parcel specific. And now those zoning districts then dictate what the land uses are and what the zoning regulations are going to be for how that property owner can then build on that property and use their property. Zoning runs with the land, and it is a legislative act. It's authorized to all municipalities through state statutes, which is something we refer to as our police powers, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit here. But that process per state statute requires one public hearing, and final approval by the city council or the governing body, because it is a legislative act, because you are changing a property owner's rights that they have on their property. So what is our zoning authority, right? And so what can we do when a development comes in before us? So these police powers that we have generally state in state statute, as well as being backed by case law, is that we have the ability to regulate for public health, safety, and general welfare. And so we do that to make sure that the zoning is compatible and harmonious with what the existing land uses are and what the area is, and also making sure that it follows our procedures and requirements in the state statute. So what do I mean by that public health, safety, and general welfare? Well, I first want to explain that we do have 3 different kinds of zoning in Lee Summit. The first is what we call conventional zoning. It's also known as straight zoning. And so what that basically means is your zoning code is set up that all of your regulations are already established, so there's no reason to negotiate. If someone walks in the door and they're like, I have 3 acres of land and I want to zone it to this conventional district of yours. I'm going to follow all of your regs. There's no modifications, there's no variances. Then that's what we call a conventional zoning. We have a couple of those districts here. Our agriculture district and our residential large lot and RDR, for instance, are a couple of those examples. And then the benefit to that is it already sets up all of your regulations, and so you don't actually need a preliminary development plan at all because you're agreeing that you're going to do everything your code says. But however, then you don't have the negotiations tool that goes along with it. Planned districts, on the other hand, is what we use the majority of here. And a planned district is a district that municipalities can enact in their codes. And those districts allow for negotiations, for back and forth, for that compromise and that interchange between the property owner and the planning commission, ultimately the city council. But there are limits and parameters to that negotiation, which we'll get into in a moment here. And that does then require a preliminary plan, because we want to see what it is they're asking for and see the reason and the needs for any modifications or special dispensations that they want on that property. Then we have overlay districts. We have a couple of them here as well, most notably like our M150 corridor overlay district. And overlay districts are used when you have areas of land that you want to protect a little bit more, that you want to have additional regulations on, like you might have a historic preservation overlay district. So certain areas of town, no matter what they zone to and their underlying zoning is, they're always going to have this extra layer of regulations on top of it. So we have a couple of those here in town as well, but the bulk of what you all see is those planned districts. So far, so good? I can start all over again for you if you want. I'm kidding. Okay. So how does then planning and zoning come together? So we have our comprehensive plan, which is our vision and our long-term goals. It is policy. It's not a legislative act at this time. It's our guide. It's our guide for that reasonable expectation for growth. And it's very important because that comprehensive plan is what is used most often in courts when there are land use or zoning cases that go before the courts in any state. And so that's why it's the first thing that we'll look to. And then our zoning, or our UDO that we have here, is our implementation tool. And how do we implement those goals from our Ignite comprehensive plan? So here's how the way we do it. So when we think of zoning, we think of it in terms of the land use in the district. And so a really great example I always try to do is with restaurants, because who doesn't like to eat? So when you are zoning a property and someone comes in, we're zoning to a district and we're zoning for land uses. So in our code, for instance, if someone comes in and they want to build a restaurant, we aren't going to zone for that tenant or that business. That is way outside of our police powers as a municipality and is not backed by state statute. So this means that if someone wants to come in and build any kind of restaurant, they might show you the elevations and the signs and everything else, so you know it's Chipotle or you know it's Jack Stack Barbecue. But technically, from a zoning standpoint, we're zoning to a commercial district, and the land uses are going to be the uses that you see on your screen. That property owner still has a right to have any other tenant move in after you zone that property. So if you do zone a property, say to commercial, and you think you're getting a Chipotle or you think you're getting another Cooper's Hawk, which you can never have too many, that property owner can decide to sell, and they would have the right and they would have the permitted uses by right in that district to have a different restaurant open up there instead. Does that make sense so far? So good? Okay.
Let me ask you just something that came up recently. So depending on zoning, that refers to list of uses. And so I think we just ran into this like on 150, where it was initially supposed to be, I don't remember, it ended up being maybe a car wash or
oil change.
Or an oil change. And because we had zoned it that, and even though the original use was, it fit in the zoning, it wasn't right? So whatever the original use was, so technically, when that person came back, we didn't really have the ability to say, you can't put that in there.
That's about 95% correct, yes. And I'm actually going to get to a little example of that. And so I'm glad that you bring that up. Zoning is so important because, and in many cities, zoning is a separate vote than your preliminary plan, but we have ours tied together here, which is perfectly fine, and many cities do that as well. But to your point, if you don't have the zoning district approved and you don't have that land use approved, that plan then can't exist, because if you didn't grant that zoning. And so that is why we pay so much attention, and we always, when the staff planners do their presentations, they start with the comprehensive plan and what the zoning is and what the ask is that they're requesting. And you can, within those, within our process, there are zoning stipulations that you can always add, which tie to some of those land uses. So say someone comes in the door and they tell you that you're going to get a restaurant, drive-up, drive-through, or general restaurant, and you all know that that's really, there's some other uses you don't want to see. Like you wouldn't want it to turn into a hospital, or you wouldn't want it to turn into a motorcycle sales shop or a tattoo parlor, which are also uses in that district. You do have the authority to restrict some land uses, especially when it's a planned district or like a large-scale planned district that we have that sometimes come before us too, to help make sure that you do get a better sense of what's going to be built there. So this really ties into, well, what you can and can't do. So our zoning authority, again, starts from, excuse me, state statute, which again, very common throughout all the states. Missouri state statute calls out what we can and should be asking for during zoning, and the questions, is my time up? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm done. For state statute, it does call out exactly what you can and can't be asking about. And so state statute for us, and I underlined the area in the code, and this is the exact state statute verbatim, basically states that we can review our zoning requests that we get based on it, does it meet the comprehensive plan goals? We can talk about public health, safety, and general welfare items such as traffic and traffic congestion. Does it promote health and general welfare? We can talk about light, which we do often with light spillover, light pollution, density, population. Is there access and adequate provisions of infrastructure such as water, sewer, parks, other infrastructure, roads and things? And does it fit within the character of the area with the other uses? And so if you notice there, everything that state statute identifies for us that we can use as zoning criteria are going to be all items that are outside of a building. So that's why when you all get preliminary development plans, we don't provide you with the interior finishes or the interior building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, or anything like those plans, because that's inside the building. And zoning is all talking about what are you allowed to do with the land on the exterior of that building. Nothing with the business model, nothing with marketing, and nothing on the day-to-day operations of the building. So to get that even further down, and so why do we want to follow state statute, right? So state statute is also supported by a lot of case law. And so I tried to pick ones closer to the area. There's lots of national cases that say the same thing as well. But there's kind of three main points here, and it all gets to the crux of we are within our authority as long as the questions that we're asking and the decisions that we're making is based on our comprehensive plan, our requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, any technical studies such as traffic studies or sewer capacity studies, then you can use those items to make your zoning decision. Other than that, you start getting on some shaky ground and making yourself vulnerable. So the first item I want to talk about real quick is spot zoning, and what we mean by that is you want to avoid spot zoning, and that's when you're treating one property owner completely differently than surrounding property owners for their sole benefit in terms of the zoning. So say you have an area of land and it's completely engulfed with residential zoning all around it, sorry, and your comprehensive plan calls for it to stay residential and one property comes in, hey, I'm right smack in the middle and I want to zone this and change it to commercial. That would be spot zoning. Completely doesn't fit with the area, it doesn't fit with anything around. It's a very unique and different zoning change with massive different uses that are allowed that are inconsistent with the rest of the area. So that's spot zoning that we always want to be cautious of and not do. The second item to be aware of is that your zoning decisions have to be based on substantial relationship pertaining to that public health, safety, and general welfare, and that rational and reasonable basis. And so there's hundreds of court cases that talk about what that means is you cannot be arbitrary and capricious. Your decisions and what you're weighing those decisions on can't be something that is not supported by your codes and by your comprehensive plan. So for instance, if you have decided to not approve a zoning because you just don't like one particular tenant, or you don't want to go with a zoning but because you convinced there's a problem even though none of the technical studies show that there is a problem or a concern with an area. Also, what a lot of cities, and this has never happened here, some cities can get into trouble, and there's lots of other court cases that talk about this too, is being arbitrary can also mean if you keep changing the game. So there's been cities and court cases in which developer came in and a city denied their application because the traffic study said there was going to be problems because the road capacity couldn't handle the traffic. Applicant came back in and said, hey, we changed our plans, we lowered the density, there's no longer the traffic problem. Engineering agreed, and hey, we also agreed to fix any of the road requirements that are needed. So they come back in, and then the city says, oh, well, now we don't like the architecture, that's a problem. So the applicant's like, fine, I'll go back and change the architecture. They come back, and then the city now starts something new. And so you can see that pattern where they're just being arbitrary back and forth with what they're saying. They keep changing the game on the applicant. So it's really great the way we have our process here that the applicants get all the full details of everything that is a concern, right up front. And the last thing is, and sometimes, and this can be really hard whenever you get a controversial zoning, but there are cases out there that talk about the public interest. And you need to make sure that any private detriment to the property owner does not outweigh what the public interest is. And the public interest is not dependent on one or two people. And that's what this case was talking about. So if you have a handful of, 2, 3 people that come in opposition of something, you need to really weigh that against the whole community and the big picture to make sure that not just the public interest of 1 or 2 people outweighs what the general consensus of the community has been overall, which can be tricky, I know, when we have folks who come and are very passionate about an item. Our planning commission had something like this recently, and so did you all, and they did an excellent job with still working through and talking it out and listening to the person's concerns, but still then at the end of the day made the decision based on the zoning and the Unified Development Ordinance and the technical studies that were there. So it was very well done. So to talk a little bit, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with this spot zoning, I was thinking about this project, and so tell me how this applied. Douglas Road has been up by North High School. I believe all that land along there is zoned commercial.
Okay.
And so a couple of years ago, I don't think I was on the council, I was on planning at the time, and that was turned into RP4.
Mm-hmm.
So now how was that not a spot zoning issue when everything else along there was supposed to be commercial?
Well, so a couple things is, first, I'm not familiar with that one, so I'm just going to talk in generalities. I'm sure what happened also was looking at what the future land use plans were for that area, because it may have very well been that there had already been some discussions and talk and rationalization of, you know what, commercial's not going to fit here after all, and moving forward for the future, residential will be better. Or knowing and understanding that the type of residential that was approved was going to help facilitate the commercial that would come and would help support the commercial would come, would be another reason and a way to do that as well. There has to be a rational nexus to it, and that reasonableness of that you weren't just arbitrarily deciding, I just want to help this one person out, but there's no rational basis behind it. Does that help a little bit?
Oh,
And I think it would be different if there was already commercial property there. There was no property there.
There was
Yeah.
no commercial property right there, but there was commercial property all along down, and the
Yeah.
police station was there, and all
So
along
I
down
think
there.
what this is saying is like, you have a development, like I think your example was really good. It's residential, and then there's this little piece in between it, and you go, oh, we're going to change that commercial. It's like, well, that totally disrupts it.
It disrupts the whole area. And if you were going to do that, but then understanding you weren't changing your studies, you weren't changing your comp plan, it was all going to still stay residential, then it makes no sense to have that plot right in the middle of it.
I agree with your
disrupt
question,
that.
but I think what you're like looking at was like vacant land that is because then it stops and it's the police station and then it goes down, right? You're talking across from, right?
From the
whatever.
from the
Yeah,
North High
so
School.
we had envisioned whatever there. And
It was
nothing-
commercial. That's
Right.
what we had envisioned there.
Right, and so there was no development there, and this opportunity came, and so the zoning was changed to say like, it's not spot zoning because it went outside of what was initially intended for it, but then there was a change for that. Well, you can argue whether you think that's right or that's wrong,
yeah,
but
I
it
could
doesn't
argue
fit
that,
into, but
yeah.
doesn't fit in the definition of spot zoning.
And there are some times too where you decide with your plans, hey, you know what, this whole area is going to be commercial, but then you find out market demands change, other characteristics of the area change where residential makes more sense. Or again, a lot of times high-density residential is going to help facilitate. So if that area was vacant for a really long time and you knew you need those rooftops to get the commercial spurred, then it's not doing it, it's not being inconsistent for the benefit of a single property owner then. You're still benefiting the area and you're trying to facilitate and get the growth right there by bringing those rooftops in.
Yeah, and I understand what you're talking about in theory here with your spot
Okay.
zoning. I totally get that, but I just thought of that as an example of could that have been considered kind of a spot zoning because it was zoned commercial? And there really was never any conversation like this. Would have been nice to have that kind of a conversation
But
during
that
that
says
period
from
of time.
surrounding properties, and there are no surrounding properties.
There are
And
surrounding
Not in
properties.
that little area. There are like down the road. So again, I'm not, like, I see what you're saying as far as an argument. This is just saying like,
Yeah, I get it.
that's not a spot zone.
I get it, I get it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Chair.
And so to get into a little bit more of the legal challenges before I get into a zoning case example, to walk you through a little bit of some of these things, to talk about the lack of authority, arbitrary and capricious, and fraud, collusion, and bad faith a little bit more, which is the main legal challenges cities will face, I'm going to step away and turn it over to David.
David Bushek, Chief Counsel of Economic Development and Planning. I'm going to talk about these three bases for a type of lawsuit that the city might see to a zoning challenge, and I'll speak to the example that you were just talking about a little bit too, because that might be helpful in this context. So there's three types of challenges of all the different types of lawsuits that the city might face for a zoning decision. And this could come from a disgruntled applicant that you turned down, or it could come from a disgruntled neighbor that when you approved a project, then the neighbor wants to sue the city. So it could come from a number of potential plaintiffs. The first is lack of authority. That is the argument is exactly what it sounds like, that the city was without authority to rezone the property. In modern times, that really only has one practical application, because anytime the planning commission and city council are holding a zoning hearing, you have the authority to rezone the property. The one place that we can goof up is notices. And what the case law says is, if the city fails to post the proper notices before the rezoning hearing occurs, then the city's without the authority to rezone the property. That's about it today. So if we don't do the notices right, then, and there's only one notice that's required by statute, and that's the publication notice 15 days before the single public hearing that's required by statute. So the second public hearing that's held in front of the city council, that's extra. The mailed notices is extra, posting notices is extra, neighborhood meeting, that's extra. There's only one notice that's required by statute, and that's the publication notice. So the only way that I can see the city would ever really get into problem with the authority question is failing to do the proper notice. Second, arbitrary and capricious. This is the argument that the decision that the city council made is just what it says. It's arbitrary and capricious. And what that means is there's no rational basis for the decision. And what the court cases say when you condense all of the legalese down is, as long as we can articulate a basis for your decision and there's evidence to support it, the courts will defer to the city council's decision. So the argument that you sort of just had about the example that Amy provided is a perfect example when you're talking about was this or was this not spot zoning. you were pointing to factors that said, maybe so. And you're pointing to some factors that said, maybe not. And then you can sort of draw back from that one specific example that she mentioned. You could start to look at the institutional use across the street, which is the police station. You could look at the institutional use across the street, which is the high school. And you can start to look at the area. The point is, it's a fairly debatable question. So if we ever faced a lawsuit with that type of allegation, the thing that I would be arguing in court is exactly what you just demonstrated. This is a fairly debatable question, and the court cases say that the court should defer to the city council's decision as long as the question is fairly debatable. That's about it. And then the third, fraud, collusion, and bad faith. This, again, is just what it sounds like, and it's pretty bad. The fraud and collusion would have to be something approaching, criminal in nature, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen or heard of any allegations of fraud or collusion in any of the decisions that the city council's made since I've been working with the city. And if I did, I would raise the alarm. So that's something that I'm sort of in the background when it comes to zoning decisions. We're always monitoring for. I haven't seen anything like that. But if there were allegations of an elected or an appointed official taking inappropriate action in communications with an applicant or maybe with somebody who's opposed and potentially commits to vote a certain way before they hear the evidence in the hearing and before they're actually charged with making a decision, that's where we can get in trouble with fraud, collusion, or bad faith. That's not a concern in Lee Summit, but it's one of the bases that somebody could argue to try to invalidate a decision. That's about it. Those are the three types of challenges that we would face, and the courts generally defer to the city on the question of arbitrary and capricious. And like I said, the fact that you're able to have a spirited debate about an application proves that it's a fairly debatable question in most cases. So that concludes my summary, and I can talk more, or we can move to the other slides.
I think you got a few questions here. Mr. Trafton?
Oh, thank you, sir. On the lack of authority, and you said the only statute requirement is the 15 days prior to the hearing.
Correct.
By publication.
Correct.
Does it define publication as notice in a newspaper, or is it like?
Yes, it's a
what is
newspaper of general circulation in the city. And when the city crossed the threshold of 100,000 population, it has to be a daily newspaper. So we went through an extensive analysis at the end of 23, I think it was, early last year, regarding what exactly qualifies as a valid publication now. And we determined there's really only 2 newspapers, maybe 3 that qualify. One that we publish in now, the Star, is one that's a daily newspaper. The Pulse Legal Publications is what we publish in because that's a daily newspaper. And then the Independence Examiner, I believe, is a published daily newspaper. I'm not sure about that today, but we determined that there's very few newspapers that actually qualify for Lee Summit once we cross that 100,000 threshold. So it has to be a newspaper of daily circulation. Yeah, go ahead.
Since we had a question recently, I wanted to add a couple things too with our public notices. Most all municipalities in the state of Missouri do 1 public hearing. We do 2. And the benefit to that is that everyone gets those notices then twice. So we're noticing out to residents twice instead of just the one time. We also do 300, our code says 300 feet, but we do 315, 310, and then as a buffer. And then we'll go beyond that if we haven't hit like a property or something, or if we know something's like 5 feet farther away, we extend beyond that too. Most municipalities in our KC region are only between 185 and 250 feet. And then when we did a broader search when we were looking at all of this too, there's only 1 or 2 cities that exceed the parameters of how far out the notices go, which is Carmel, Indiana. But we still pass them because we do 2. We send it out twice and they only do once. And then we also require neighborhood meeting, and those neighborhood meetings is a time for the residents to meet directly one-on-one and have that conversation with the applicants, which is not required in most codes and not required in state statute either, and not all cities do. And then we also have our size of our signs that we post are in some cases double the size of the signs in other municipalities, and also include a QR code, which most other cities do not do either. So lots of opportunity. I just wanted to add that to help.
Yeah, and a little more color on the mail notices, because this comes up from time to time. The basis for the distance that Amy was just talking about is this. If 30% or more of the property owners within 185 feet of the boundaries of a property that's proposed to be rezoned files a protest petition, then that heightens the vote requirement at the city council. So the 185 feet is sort of the magic distance to measure that 30% if they file a protest petition to heighten the vote requirement. So once upon a time, Lee Summit sent out notices to people within 185 feet, and then people would complain, well, I live just outside that, I didn't get noticed, why not me? So we expanded it. So that's why we give notices beyond the 185 feet to give actual notice to people, which is not required by statute, and it's beyond the protest distance that's required by statute to meet that 30% requirement. So again, Lee Summit in many ways goes above and beyond on our notices.
Thank you. Okay, so regarding the fraud, collusion, and bad faith, so I just have, we're allowed to meet with developers. I've had developers before we've left the meeting say, okay, can I count on you for your vote? Trying to get us to commit to yes or no to the developer, yet I feel like if we were to meet with a constituent and they were to say the same thing, then everyone would be upset. But since it's a developer that says, okay, can I count on you for your vote, it's okay. I feel like we were elected to represent our constituents, so I don't understand that double standard.
So the topic there is ex parte communications, meaning outside the confines of the public hearing where you receive the evidence and testimony to make your decision. Our recommendation is to minimize the amount of contacts that you have with both the applicant and other interested parties. A rezoning decision in Missouri is a legislative decision, so you're not prohibited from talking with people, but we discourage it for the reason that you're speaking to, which is you could face the allegation by anybody that you're having inappropriate contacts with one party or the other. So if you meet with just the applicant, people who are opposed might say they might argue that you're colluding with them, or it has the appearance. And if you just meet with constituents, then the applicant might argue the same thing. So that's where we recommend that you minimize your contacts with applicants and interested parties. And then during the public hearing, we also advise that if you do have those contacts, disclose it during the public hearing and let everybody know that you're going to make your decision based on the evidence and testimony received during the public hearing, which then relates back to my advice to your specific question. If you're meeting with somebody and you're saying, can I count on your vote? My recommendation would be, I need to hear the evidence and testimony during the public hearing, and then I will make my decision.
Thank you. And since I've had a developer ask me if they could count on my vote, I'm very picky about which developers I will meet with at this point, but yeah.
I think that's a good practice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, going back to lack of authority. I just want to ask, because, I went through this when I did my project on Fifth Street. Mm-hmm. And as I remember, I had to send out within 300 feet, but aren't you on the honor system? So I didn't remember, and maybe that's changed since then, that the documentation that you require for the developer to substantiate that he sent out those notices. Is there?
I'll let Amy speak to that because they deal with us on a regular basis.
Hello. So we do have like an affidavit that they attest to, that they sent out the notices, and we do get and request a copy of the list of everyone that they sent the notices to. I don't know what year you went through the process. I apologize.
It was 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know what we do now in the years I've been here is that we require that and get the list of who all they notified.
Of who all they had. Mm-hmm. I had a neighborhood meeting as well, and no one came. I really wasn't doing anything but making it better, so everybody was hip, hip, hooray. So at the council meeting, what was it, the week before, I made the mention because there's been, and I know we all hear it, we all still hear it, that I didn't get the notice, I didn't know about it, I didn't see it, it's not out there. I know it is, but I still, feedback is always good to have, and when you get it, I always think, well, how can we do it better? And so he challenged me to do best practices, and so I kind of wanted to know, I'm thinking about this, but I kind of wanted to maybe see if I could sit down with somebody and talk about that a little bit more to find out, because I have people call me all the time that see the yellow signs, and they're like, oh, it's a foreclosure. Can I talk to you about this foreclosure? It's not a foreclosure. So they don't even understand that, but it's a lack of. Yeah, it's a lack of something, so, okay.
Would
great.
love to talk to you about it anytime at all. Yeah, that'd be fine. It's something we always are looking at and studying. And, you know, if we find an instance, we have people call us too, and they're like, hey, I didn't get the notice. And we're like, that's okay. The notice just says the public hearing is next week. So here's the information. So that way, they're still getting it. But definitely, you know, we haven't run across a time yet when someone said they didn't get notice and they didn't know about the public hearing, so they couldn't come and participate. That's the problem for us. If we ever do, you know, find someone or they let us know, hey, I wasn't able to participate because I missed your public hearing, that's a problem for sure. And so anything we can do, and we always want to keep an eye on that for sure. I'm happy to sit down
Okay,
anytime too.
that'd be fabulous, thank you.
I
Thanks,
can
Chair.
add one other thought to that discussion point, which is, we haven't had to say this publicly, but we will if the need ever arises in court. If somebody comes to one of our public hearings and argues they didn't get notice, they've waived their objection by appearing at the hearing. They had actual notice because they're here at the hearing. So the way I think about this, I keep quiet, but when I see somebody standing up there saying, I didn't get notice about this hearing, talk, you're here.
And there's no other information in those notices other than the hearing date. So they're not missing out on, like, they didn't miss anything other than, you know, there was no other news that was provided or written out, so.
And that could very well be.
Yeah.
It's a good point, that they thought that there was something more that they needed to know, and it was
Yeah.
just to tell you, here it is, come see.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay, so I can go through just an example real quick to help too, and then any other questions you all have. So zoning criteria, and we talked about this already. We have our 18 points of zoning criteria in our code. These are derived from what our authority is in state statute. Some of these, to be honest with you, and we've talked about it with legal, some of them are repetitive. Some of them could be a little bit more crystal clear. But we do look at all of these as they're coming through for every case that walks in the door. And then and that's going to focus on those items that we talked about with the zoning, the compatibility, the comp plan. Development plan review, that review criteria is then going to look at the other parts of how the site is laid out. The architecture, the parking, landscape, setbacks, lighting, and any environmental stuff. And then, just as important, but not as much fun, but the subdivision plats, which come later, which is when you're platting those properties, legally establishing those lots of record so that you can build on it. But so let's just talk about the case example real quick. And so our development review process is a 12-month process, but that is from start to finish, which may sound like a long time, but actually it's pretty efficient. And as we get compliments all the time on being the most efficient in the area too. And we do a lot of these things. We will overlap a lot of these items where we can to help developers and applicants and property owners out. But it is on average 12 months to occupancy. So that's to full construction. So say, and we wanted to do a make-believe project in case as well, not to get into the weeds in a specific item to avoid that. So just for teaching or discussion purposes, pretend we have Amy's A1 convenience store, which sounds like a rock star convenience store right off the bat, right? So it's going to be on Ward, and let's say I'm currently zoned agriculture. I want commercial zoning because my use is convenience store / retail. So first things, again, we look at the area. What's the zoning currently? And it's agriculture. Comprehensive plan tells us that the future of the area should be commercial or service. Also, office would be allowed. And then there would be some high density, residential and things on the other side. So this is a breakdown of what those points are. There's the 18 zoning points, but because some of them are repetitive and such, these are like your main items and things that we look at. And in most cities, if not all cities, your comprehensive plan's the #1 thing. So does the proposal for Amy's A1 convenience align with the goals of the comp plan? Is it compatible with the land uses of the surrounding area? Right now, it's vacant, so it's not disrupting anything. We know in the future, though, it will be all built out as commercial and service, so that shouldn't disrupt anything. Is the land use allowed in the current district? Nope, because it's agriculture, so we need to rezone. The length of time it's been vacant, I can't build on this. I've owned it since 1782. I can't build on it because it's agriculture, so I need to rezone it. So that's why that part's important. Any negative impacts, And can it meet all zoning district requirements? And hopefully these are the items too that resonate with you from our staff presentations and reports that you see. So stipulations and conditions that we can put on here that we talked a little bit before at chair level introduced is we can put zoning stipulations, and sometimes you'll see that in our cases. So we can include, with this case example, traffic requirements. If I need to build a left turn lane or something into my development, we can do setback requirements if there's any modifications. And we can also restrict, the last one, we can restrict the other uses in the district. So I'm asking for CP2 zoning, but I only want to build one thing. I do know, though, there's 50 other land uses in our code that are allowed in the CP2 district. So there might be, for instance, one of them is, and I wrote down, motorcycle sales and a garage surface parking lot. So you may want to, hey, the vision for the area is commercial office. We want high quality along Ward. We'll approve this zoning, but we're also going to restrict the land use of surface parking garage, for instance, because you don't want my lot to ever be sold and build nothing but 3-story parking garage there. You have that authority to do that because that is a land use in this district.
So if I could just, so I think important for us to know, like, because we've seen that before, but now you wouldn't recommend any restrictions. Like, your job is not to recommend restrictions, but if it would be on us to say the condition of approval is we're okay with the convenience store in this location. Yeah. And we will zone accordingly. If it changes from that any way, shape, or form, does it revert zoning back to what it was? Or that is now stuck at that, but it would require them to come, like, they don't have the luxury of, like, as long as it's a convenience store, we're good with that rezoning. And then it does get rezoned and it's official. And then if that use changes or whatever it is, it would trigger them having to come back and get approval again.
So yes and no. So our code, so zoning does not revert and zoning does not expire. So say you approve my zoning here for the convenience store. If I then want to sell this property and I want to build Lion's Choice, because I miss it desperately, and all of them closed up, and I was the only one in Kansas City who ate there. But say I want to build Lion's Choice. Our code is set up that even though your zoning is still in place, that preliminary development plan is such a major change from what was already approved, because it'll change. There'll be a drive-through now, and there'll be different traffic patterns and the architecture and everything. It does require, in our code, to come back through as a revised preliminary development plan. And while you're looking at the use, it is trickier for you to deny a fast food restaurant use because during the time of zoning, you did not preclude it. So you can deny it based on traffic, architecture, lighting, landscaping, I don't meet the setbacks and things of that nature. And there still might be opportunity if you can show incompatibility with other land uses, if you can show it's not compatible with what's existing in the area, you could deny it based on some of those, but it's always easiest if during the initial zoning, you would have said, you know what, Amy, we're going to approve this, but we want to still prohibit fast food restaurants and motorcycle sales on this property for anything in the future. We don't often do that. Staff will not often recommend anything, but if we do see something looming, like if, say there's a brand new big development, it's next to residential, and they want to zone to a district that allows outdoor, say that it allows some kind of outdoor use, like outdoor storage yards. We would probably in our staff report say, hey, we do recommend approval, but you might want to consider restricting and not allowing outdoor storage because of the residential next door. And the applicant's okay with that or something. We would always also talk to the applicant first.
Wouldn't it be easier just to say, we're only allowing this use
yes.
instead of having to pick all the ones that we wouldn't allow? So it's like, hey, if you change, we're okay with this for that convenience store, but if it's anything other than a convenience store, it's...
You can do that, but the benefit to that is you know exactly what you're going to get exactly on that property for the city. The downside, though, to think about is the marketability of that property for the property owner and tenants. And, you know, we have some really great developers here in town, and so their ability to showcase and attract businesses could be impacted if those businesses think and know they have to go through a whole zoning process, and it's not like a guarantee that they have that use. So it's something just to weigh.
Okay.
And so then, if zoning is okay, then we get to that preliminary development plan analysis, and we want to look at and consider the landscaping, the site circulation, and that gets in with the architecture and things of that nature too. And I tried to meet our new architecture standards. I'm not sure if I did or not on the right-hand
Gas
side.
station.
The signage doesn't work though. But that's pretty much it. Happy to answer any other questions you may have. Hope to help a little bit with things that were on your mind.
I went completely through this presentation, and I will tell you something, that, you know, I've been barking about training. David was there when I was on planning, bark, bark, bark. And some of the stuff that you have in here was some of the stuff he provided when we were on planning. But I think this would be a beautiful training with new planning commissioners, new council people when they come on to have, because, you know, I think that was one of our gravel rocks, was training for council and our planning commissioners. So I was just going to tell you that I think this would be excellent for a training presentation. It was very comprehensive, thorough. It was good.
Thank you.
I was going to see if she would toot her own horn, but we did just onboard a new commissioner, and she did a fabulous training. I actually sat in into it. It was like, I think 2 hours, and I missed 30 minutes. But I learned a lot from it, just being, you know, so just so you know, there is pretty comprehensive training that the city staff have put together, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. Okay. Thanks.
So bring us to our next item, 20256958, a discussion on Section 5, 200, number and type of chickens allowed. Mr. Wagner.
How you doing? My name is Randy Wagner. I'm the manager of animal control, and I was asked to come here tonight to look at the possibility of raising the number of chickens allowed from 6 to 8. And there's been some things happened in the recent history of the state and stuff that might actually affect that a little bit. So just a short history. The chicken ordinance went in effect in July of 2013. It allows for up to 6 female chickens, and the program has been a huge success. There's a ton of families with chickens in Lee Summit because of this. That's probably one of our most popular programs that we have. 6 hens is the industry standard in Missouri. That's why we did that in the first place. Just a few towns around here: Independence, Harrisonville, Springfield, and Odessa allow 6 chickens. Pleasant Hill, for some reason, allows 5. I'm not sure why that is. When an ordinance allows for more than 6 chickens, it seems like larger plots of land are required, which made most citizens unable to have chickens. Like, I believe Kansas City, you can have 15 chickens, but they have a 100-foot rule. And so there's not a whole bunch of people in town, especially in my neighborhood, with 100 feet, you're going to be able to have chickens at that point. So did a little research on this, and Missouri actually passed a bill last August. It's Missouri House Bill 2062, codified in 2024, put restrictions on HOAs restricting chicken ownership. Apparently, HOAs were really restricting people they couldn't have chickens, and so Missouri passed a law that said that even in HOAs, you can have 6 chickens per 2/10 of an acre. We called down to University of Missouri Extension, saying, according to David Hoffman, who's a livestock specialist with the University of Missouri Extension, Cass County, 6 chickens per 2/10 of an acre is the state guideline in Missouri, so that's the state guideline for all of Missouri. This is based on animal welfare for the standard chicken coop size guidelines for most municipalities. It also mitigates concerns with noise, waste, odor, etc. This is the reason for the majority of municipalities in Missouri for residential chickens set as 6 hens. with the passing of this House bill last summer and mirroring state law, we would recommend only allowing 6 chickens at this time. It would be best practice for animal welfare and to help with concerns with noise, disease, and odor. So, any questions?
Yep, so I have a lot of questions. So I
figured that.
I actually think not 8 chickens, I actually think 12. And the reason that I think so, well, so I've received quite a few emails. One email that I would like to outline a little bit, let me pull it up. Okay, for one, I'll just tell you my experience. So I don't know, Tractor Supply says there's a livestock law. I've never looked the livestock law up on poultry, but they claim that, so that's the only place that you can really buy chickens here commercially in our city. They make you buy a minimum of 4 chickens. So you don't have to buy them in increments of 4, but you have to buy a minimum of 4. So if you buy 6 chickens one year, you have a chicken that passes away, that gets taken by a fox or just passes away from natural causes, you can't go and just buy 1 more chicken. You have to buy 4 more chickens. So my proposal is to have 12 chickens because I've already checked, you get very minimal complaints on the 6 chickens. I've asked like numerous neighbors that have, that their neighbors have chickens. They say they don't hear the chickens, they don't smell the chickens. Most people don't even know their neighbors have chickens. I'd venture to say a lot of the people have over the amount of 6 chickens right now, but nobody knows that they have chickens in their backyard, so it's not a problem. But, so I would propose taking it from 6 to 12 chickens. But I'll read some things in the email. So I know right here it said that types of chickens allowed. I don't believe there's a restriction on the types of chickens allowed, correct? Types of hens allowed right now, correct?
I know of only one type of chicken.
Okay. there's a ton.
I mean, chickens are chickens, you know.
Yeah.
They're all the same genus species. They're just, might be a different, you know, like fog or whatever the type is different, but yeah.
Yeah, it says type of chickens. Yeah.
There is no restriction on the type of hen.
Yeah.
Or chicken.
Yeah, and so it's probably meaning, I guess, no roosters, which I think we should stay no roosters because then you get into the fertilization of the eggs and potentially more chickens.
That's a weird conversation, yeah.
Yeah. But, so I think, let me pull up. Oh yeah, and then so the laying, an average chicken lays anywhere from 2 to 3 years, can lay up to like 5 years if they're a backyard chicken. With that being said, if you buy the minimum of 4 chickens, you can't go out and get 4 more chickens. So the average lifespan of a backyard chicken is anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So you have several years that the chickens are no longer laying eggs. So you can't go buy more chickens unless you want to inhumanely kill the chickens you have, or I don't know what you do with the chickens you have. But if we do 12 chickens or and increase it in increments of 4, then you can go get, say you have 6 hens, they're not laying, you can go get 4 more. You can go get 6 more, whatever you want to do, but they're alternating years. So you have more of a consistent span of laying eggs. So that's.
Can I add one thing too? And I know that Rodney looked into this as well, is that we did also call the local areas, and to your point, but I think what we heard was if you buy the 4 first, you know, they want you to, but then you can buy single
you
chickens
can't.
after that point.
They will not sell to you at all.
You just have to take a road trip to Harrisonville.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to go to that family home and whatever it is, and they will sell to you a
They'll sell you
single.
1 or 2.
A single. Their season that they have chickens for about 3 days, 3 to 4 days. They get chickens. They don't consistently have them like throughout the entire season, like Tractor Supply or a couple stores in Blue Springs. They have chickens for like 3 days, and when they're out, they're out. They don't get more. So, I mean, you can, but you have to wait in the line and fight people for chickens. But yeah.
Okay, we just try not to make ordinance by retail and how they sell things. You know, and plus 12 chickens I think is even, well, I mean, you have to start worrying about the welfare of the chickens, because now there's a lot of people in this town that have a set chicken thing already in place, the coop and everything, and they're expensive. There's a lot of money involved. And you start putting more chickens in that spot, then you're talking about an animal welfare problem.
We're not forcing people to have 12 chickens, just giving them that option. If they want to have 12 chickens, they can. But we're not going to force anyone to have
Yeah, if somebody wants
12
12 chickens, they're going to put it where the 8 chickens or the 6 chickens are. I guarantee they're not going to put in another huge $2,000 coop or something like that. It's not those
You're
people.
doing that already,
Those guys
yeah.
are the ones that take care of chickens. Those are the ones we're worried about. We're worried about the people that are not taking care of the chickens, and definitely odor. That's a big thing. I grew
How
up on
many
a farm.
complaints do you get a year for that?
Oh, probably 30. Nothing. I'm not just for odor, but you get odor, and at large is always a fun one.
So when I checked, I was told 0, but you do get.
Yeah, we don't get 0 chicken calls. Who'd you call? Wasn't me.
No,
We were just on one 2 days ago. I mean, that's common though. I mean, quite honestly, I'm surprised we only get 25 or 30. I actually think it's a great program, and it's when we go, we make sure and enforce it to what the ordinance says. That way, we don't have problems with it again. We don't let them slack. We don't let them have odor issues and things like that. We just don't let them do that. And that way, that's why you don't hear many complaints from people, because they're held to a standard. So I just don't know if you're gonna be able to hold them to that standard at 12. Well, plus the state regs is 6, so then you start running into trouble.
And the HOA, I know that the HOAs would have to stop at the limit of 6, but I think people should have that additional option if they want additional chickens. But that's just my opinion. That's what I would propose is 12.
Hey, I grew up on a farm, I'm all for it, but, you know, state regulations are 6 as of August, so, August 24.
But our city code would, like, other than the HOA, our city code would be enforceable over that state regulation, correct?
We tend not to do that. Yeah, we tend not to trump state law just for municipal needs, so.
But Kansas
We can
City's
go
doing
lower.
it?
Well, Kansas City's a different story though, because you have to have 100 feet to the next residence, which is a long way. It doesn't sound like a long way, but it's a long way.
A couple things too with that was other municipalities that allow more than the 6 chickens, they're traditionally requiring 3 acres minimum lot size, which we don't require, or they require a permit and you have to go through a whole process, which we don't require that either. Or you have a lot more stringent requirements with your property. And the great thing by only having the 6 right now is that we don't have all that red tape that property owners or homeowners have to go through. But all the cities that we found too in our research that allow the 12 or the 10, you have to be like 3 acres in lot size. And our largest, you know, R1 district lowest density, I think, is only like 10,000 square feet in size. So we wouldn't have a lot of properties that would fit within that. Otherwise, you're looking at maybe having to add a lot more regulations and permit review or something to it.
That's why we went with the 6 so many years ago. It's because it gave the most amount of people the best chance of having backyard chickens, so.
So if you have over a half an acre, can we increase it to 12?
But we don't have anything like that.
Well, we do.
I would not recommend that.
I think other people have questions, but okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's not really well, I guess I have one question. In the beginning, you said we had 8. We currently have 8 chickens. People can have.
You can have
We
6.
currently can have 6.
Yes.
So why, what are we doing? So it's just like, so we already are beholden to 6 chickens. I know she wants more. I know
Which is
she wants more.
compatible
with what the state
regulations is
has
6.
recommended.
Yes. And that's why we picked 6 in first place, because it was the industry standard back before Missouri made that, the 6 chickens, the law, so.
And Councilmember Rader, I think if your question was, we're here tonight just to talk about what our chicken ordinance is and get direction from you all on what, if anything, you'd like staff to do or look into or change.
But it sounds like we're not going to get any more chickens, because we don't want to go against what the state statutes are.
I mean,
that's correct.
That's your all's choice.
That's your all's choice.
No,
That's just our record. That's your
I
all's
wouldn't
choice
mind
what
having
you
more
do.
chickens, but, you know, if you're telling us.
I don't know what percent of our community we're serving by increasing it. I guess my personal opinion would be, I think in my neighborhood, like, we're small lots, and we could have 6 chickens next to me. 12 feels like a lot. Like, if there were 12 chickens, But, you know, I guess if it was a large lot or a farm or something like that, like I could see that being an option, but like, I don't know, I think it's, again, how many people have their own chickens in the city? Like, do we even know?
It's not something we can track right now because we don't
Right.
require a permit for it, so we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I probably know 30 families with chickens right now, but, you know, you never know who all has everything.
I always just think of like, what are the unintended outcomes, and like, why are we creating new policy, and what kind of problems does it pose? Like, I don't have a problem with chickens per se. It's just like, do you expand it to 12 and then you bring a host of issues? I don't know. It feels like 6 is probably enough if you live in the suburbs of Lee Summit to have eggs.
It would take a total ordinance rewrite because,
But if we want to,
chicken
if
coops-
somebody wants to take it to council and have the debate on it to change the ordinance to something more and have a compelling reason to do it, I think it's also, I mean, obviously animal control has a position on it, the state has a position on it. If we wanted to explore like, you know, I mean, again, I guess if you lived on a bunch of land somewhere and didn't have a bunch of neighbors, like maybe like that would make sense to have more, but.
So once again, with that, if they're 400 feet from another residence, they can have as many chickens as they want.
Right.
And I know some people have a lot of chickens, but they have the distance requirement, so.
I know it's something near and dear to you, Councilmember Pryor. I'm content just leaving it at 6, but if like, you know, we wanted to try and have, I don't even know, like, will we have to make a motion to go to council to discuss it to a new number? And
There's a couple options. You can make a motion to have further discussion with the full council if you chose to. If you wanted staff to, provide you with the research of what other city municipalities require or what they allow, we can provide that and give it back to you all as well. Or just continue discussing here. It's totally up to you all.
And that's what I was going to add too. One of your motions, for example, could be to direct staff to draft an ordinance to bring back to this committee for consideration and further debate, for example, if that's what you wanted to do.
May I ask a
Yeah, go
question?
ahead.
Thank you. Are there people currently that, I know Councilman Pryor said that have you been getting emails and things from people about the chickens?
I have.
So, I mean, it's just like, I guess it would be, the other kind of determining factor might be how many people out here are stating that would like to have more than 6 chickens. Maybe it's not 12, maybe it's 8, I don't know. But is that something that, as a representation of our constituents, should we be talking about that if it's something that we're getting pushback? That's just a
I want to
mention.
know the people that are neighbors to chickens.
I'm a neighbor to chickens. I was a
Yeah,
neighbor
so
to
like,
chickens.
I mean, I think it's important, like people that have chickens, they have opinion that they want more chickens. It's like, well, as a neighbor, like, are you?
I was perfectly fine with it.
I know, I'm saying, like, are you okay with 12 or 6? And is it I don't know, it just,
Again,
not my next door neighbor. Right, so that's, well, I'm sure someone has some chickens in the neighborhood.
We could also, if you like, come back at the next CEDC with the information on what the other cities allow, but show like, the larger number you get, the more then there's permits or there's lot size requirements. We can share our findings and continue the discussion here if you like to, or gather information on how many people or who's been, what the request is. Staff's received one request on it several months back. But we hadn't heard anything else, but certainly it sounds like you have, but.
I'm just
Whatever
totally
you'd like to
indifferent
do.
about it, like, I feel like, but I'm happy to take something forward, or like, this is our last meeting, I don't know what the new CDC will be, and they could have it brought back up again there. I also lean on animal control too, and their kind of guidance and wisdom in the state statute, but like, again, like, if.
I think it would be good. I think it would be a good idea just to allay all concerns if you did that and came back to us and said, okay, if we were to do more chickens, if that's really something that the residents here are passionate about or whatever, then, maybe there is a permitting process, or maybe, if we had to go down that road for those extra chickens, if we go beyond the state statute. So I don't know. What do you think, Councilmember? Okay.
I just had a couple questions. You know, I don't know that residents know they can own chickens. I mean, I know this has been talked about in my neighborhood. I know I have neighbors that have chickens and they have 6 hens and they've talked about wanting more than 6 hens. So I know that this is like a conversation happening, and obviously we live in a neighborhood that's small lot sizes. And so you're like 10 feet from your neighbors. So it's easier to hear the chickens and smell the chickens. And so I know not everybody's happy about that. I don't know that our association has any stricter policies. But I guess along the lines of what Councilman Pryor was saying is, I'm curious about, you know, it seems to me like a big jump to go from 6 hens at whatever the acreage site, I can't remember the number you had up there, but to have more than that as 3 acres. I mean, to me, that seems like a pretty massive kind of jump. Like, it makes sense that there would maybe be a staggered kind of approach to it. And I understand there's not a state statute about it, but I also know egg prices are expensive. And I also know that people are getting hens now to get their own eggs for this reason. I mean, is it okay? So I'm just curious if there's any kind of staggered, like if you have a half an acre, you can have X hens. If you have, you know, depending on is it titrate up? You know, maybe we could be out front of the state statute and what's happening in other cities. I mean, I'm just curious about it. So I like the idea that you guys have been talking about to do a little more research on it and see what possibilities are. The other question I have is related to hens, but a little bit unrelated. I know we're getting ready to have a really state-of-the-art farmers market in our community. I'm just curious, like, can you sell hens at the farmers market? Is that something that's allowed? You can't sell livestock?
No, you can't
At
sell
a farmer's market?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe something to consider. Because then we could promote, you know, people having their own chickens.
I just want to know how many chickens Carmel, Indiana has, what their chicken ordinance is.
I happen to know that.
Oh.
What is it?
Mic drop. 6. I'm not making, it's 6. And then we looked it up.
6 was always
and I'll show you the whole chart.
6 was industry standard even back when we passed the initial one in 2013 when chicken ordinances weren't a big thing. It was kind of unique that we actually had a chicken ordinance at that time. So, yeah.
So the only purpose of having chickens is for the eggs?
No.
There's one other one.
Some people have that.
I have a question.
Well, no, what is the purpose? I mean, so we're raising chickens for eggs. You're not killing the chickens and making chicken sandwiches, right? So then what is the net byproduct of 6 chickens, and how many eggs do you generate, and how many more eggs do you need to generate?
They typically lay from 2 to 3 years. So the lifespan of a backyard chicken is much longer than the 2 to 3 years. So if you're buying laying hens, there typically is not another purpose in having a chicken other than they're really pretty, because there's a lot of different types of chickens. I was going to propose, like, let's have backyard goats too, but I won't do that. I'm not going to.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And cows probably
and
too.
micro pigs, I know.
Yes.
Yeah,
I would take it all, but I'll stop at.
The trouble with micro pigs, they're supposed to be 20 pounds and people feed them too much, and we have macro pigs about 250 pounds.
So let's, what's our action here? What do you guys want to,
I want further discussion, because I think I wouldn't be representing a lot of my constituents if I just dropped this, because there are enough people that want to see the number increased that I feel like we need to have further discussion.
So do we want a discussion, or I feel I don't, like.
Or action, I'm good with either.
I don't know if I want you guys, like, take the time to draft an ordinance and then move it up there. I think take it to full council for a discussion or something, or?
We can take our research, just do the research only, but not like try and draft an ordinance, because there are 1,000 ways to write that. And I think we would want more direction too, to make sure we're capturing things, because otherwise we'd be writing 20 different ordinances for you all. But we could bring the research back for further discussion, either here or to full city council, whichever you prefer.
Well, Well, I don't know who will be on this group. Yeah, let's take it to full council then. So do you need a motion for that, or
Yes.
since it's just a discussion, or is it?
So at this point, you could pass a motion to direct staff to put this on a council agenda, or based on your discussion, you could just do it by general consent if there's no objection.
Yeah, I think general consent would be to bring this to council for full discussion.
Okay, we'll note that, and I think between Amy and I, we've got the notes of what needs to happen next.
Good luck. All right.
We know the discussion
Thank you.
items.
Absolutely.
All right, roundtable, does anybody have anything? All right, not seeing anything else, I will adjourn this meeting at, let me do my military time over here, 5:16.